guys, Kelly here from Body Fit Solutions. This is long overdue, but I wanted to make a little video about our deep core activation. And what we've been noticing in classes is that people either are bracing and tensing too much their abdominal wall or not connecting enough at the right time. And so I wanted to do a little video that helps to try to stimulate these muscles to work. So we're talking about our deep transverse abdominus muscles, which can't really be isolated on their own, but it's how we activate them to stabilize the spine or to find elongation that's really important, that we don't end up bracing and driving too strong into these muscles. And as you can see from the side, if we start with really bad posture, we've talked about this before in our standing posture, then our core muscles are going to be quite lax, and then what a lot of people end up doing is they pull their tummy in and pull their shoulders back. I haven't actually corrected my posture. All I've done is tense the wrong muscles to try and support me or to try and bring me to a better posture, and it's unsuccessful. So I think the first thing we need to discuss is our standing posture. And if you look at yourself in the mirror, if you can get somewhere that you can, and just notice if your pelvis is sitting forward of your knees and your hips. So if we draw a string from the ceiling down to the floor, has a little weight on it, it's called a plumb line, then actually the line should go through our ankle, through our knee joint, through our hip joint, through the center of the shoulder, and through the ear. Now if I have my pelvis forward here, what people tend to do is put the load through the front of the thighs, through the back of the spine, and through the neck. So the first thing we teach people to do is just have the hands there, and just let the weight of the pelvis rock back and forward. I'm not sticking my bottom out or tucking, I'm just really leaning the pelvis forward, leaning it back. And just notice what happens to the belly wall. So as I go forward, the belly tends to fall and displace. And as I shift my weight back more towards the heels, you should feel that the belly just gently retracts back. And that's our transverse abdominus muscle, which is the one that supports our spine, that's actually telling us, yes, now I am in a good alignment or better alignment, and now I can activate around the spine to protect it. When it's in this state and I'm not in alignment, then it's almost going to be stretched to compensate for that posture. So if we bring the weight back and feel a sense that actually it's a light drawing back, I don't need to pull my navel in or suck anything in. And you can notice if I brace, what happens to my shoulders. So I end up actually getting a rounded posture. Or some people, when they brace, their pelvis tucks under. So we end up getting this dysfunctional pattern. So all I really want is the weight to go back, to feel that. Now some of you might keep going with your upper body. So when we feel this, we want to then stack the rest of the spine on top and feel the sense of lift through the middle. So it's not a feeling of pulling the head up or pulling the chin or popping the ribs forward. It's very much a lift through the center of the body and all the way up to the top of the head. So we should feel that the belly is retracted back gently and the rib cage is broad. So we're in this wide position. Now sometimes I get people to breathe here, breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth just a little bit. Then breathe in again. And then my ribs actually feel stretched. I'm getting more lung capacity, and then you can let that out. But what often happens when we let out is then we start to deflate and come down in posture. So once we get that standing posture, the belly retracted back gently, then do a few of those little breaths that really encourage the ribs to be quite wide. And at first you might feel very military posture. You might feel very open in your chest. You might feel slightly weird because we're used to being in a different position that feels quite easy to be in. It's not necessarily right. Okay? Now from there I want to come into just an all fours position. Okay? And sometimes all fours can be quite challenging. So I'm just going to come onto my hands and knees. And what I want you to do is tuck the toes under if that's possible. And just start to bring your weight back a little bit and back over your hands. What I'm trying to do is really take the pressure off of my hands. So each time I go over, I'm trying to be a little bit lighter. See if you can take your hands off. So there really is very little weight on the hands and more into the legs and the feet and more into the abdomen and the pelvis. So I'm just taking the weight off, my hands trying to lift off. And when I come back over, I want to be lighter than before.
Often people will lock out into their elbows or really tense to be here. So I just want a nice, soft, elastic feeling, like you can spring away from the floor. And don't worry what the back does, just try and get that quality of softness around the joints of the upper body, around the wrist especially. It's like you're lifting out of the mat. So I always tell people to think of their forearms coming out of their wrists. And then once you've got that sense of space across the front of the shoulders and space in the joints, I want you to just tilt your pelvis down so that the tail goes down. So I'm rolling it gently this way. And you're going to feel a sense that the belly can hollow and scoop up. You can put your hand there. But I want you to feel the sensation, not bracing and drawing too hard, but a very gentle drawing back. And your upper ribs here should feel like they draw back. Now, I want you to keep that feeling as the pelvis comes back. And it might not look like a lot from this video, but what often happens is when we come back to a more neutral place, the belly starts to drop down. I'm going to roll the pelvis, feel that little lift of the belly, and then I'm going to keep that gentle lift, so 25% drawing back, and I'm going to roll the pelvis until my bottom bones, my sit bones are pointing back, and I can feel a little crease in the front of the hips. I want to make sure as I go back that I don't let the ribs at the front here drop down. So I'm retracting the ribs back, I'm gently retracting the belly. Now from here, I want you to press gently into one hand without losing that feeling. Now I'm making this look easy, but this is actually really, really challenging. And then coming back, lengthen if you can through the upper body, so feeling, do we still have that connection? And then pressing into the floor and coming in with my other arm. And that might be quite challenging. If it's not challenging, check where your pelvis is. Is it still tucked? So are the sit bones pointing down? Have you come to the position and then let go? Have you shifted? Okay, so from the front, if I'm in this position and I lengthen, I've got that core connection, you can see I don't really move from position. What you might feel the tendency to do, because it's a little bit easier, is to shift off center. And I challenge you to really keep the feeling of length, keep the feeling of that retraction through the belly, and then see if you can lift the hand up. And that will be a big challenge for you. Once you master that, then what I'd like you to do is from that position, so we go into that little 12 o'clock, that pelvic tilt, I keep the abdominal connection, lengthen back. Once I get the pelvis neutral, where the sit bones are pointing behind, I've got that little crease in the hip, I check that my ribs aren't dropped, so I'm going to feel that feeling travel all the way up. Am I still springy through the upper body? And I'm going to try and keep that feeling as my arms walk down. Even as I'm doing this, my belly is wanting to let go and disconnect. I'm just trying to really work with it and keep it until my elbows can come down onto the floor. And I want the shoulders to come over the elbows and then my knees to lift up. Now we're in our kneeling plank. I've got a little pelvic tilt. So if you find that your tail starts to go up and you've lost that abdominal connection, then just roll the pelvis gently back. I don't want to brace. I want to feel a really gentle lift. I want to retract the ribs back, but lengthen through the upper body. And this is really hard. The back of the neck is lengthened. And then slowly come back and rest it up. So that's going to be quite an advanced option going down into the plank. So I would really make sure you master the quadruped, the all fours position first, making sure that you're getting that feeling. Now that's related to some of the stuff that you might do for back stability. Okay, so I'm going to come down onto my back. If you need a little towel under your head, please do so. And so I'm going to go into our little pelvic clocks that we do in class. So normally when we tilt the pelvis, there can be quite a lot of tension, especially as we roll the pelvis up this way. So I want you to roll the pelvis to the ribs, our 12 o'clock position. And then I just want you to feel the texture of your belly. So do you feel like you're pulling and squeezing? And if you are, just let that go and settle in. And see if you can feel a feeling that's deeper, that almost like the belly wall is falling into your spine. Now I'm still in that position of tilt, but it doesn't feel strained. It doesn't feel like I'm bearing down into the floor. Now keep that deep belly feeling like we did in all fours and take it forward slowly. Now I have to take my time to roll the pelvis that way. I'm sending the tail down and the sit bones open. I'm not going too far. I'm taking stock of my back ribs, that I'm not overly lifting and pushing those back ribs up. I don't know if you can see that there's a big space now under here. So there will be a little bit of space in the low back, and that is great, but I don't want to force this position. So I want to roll, feel that gentle, deep abdominal connection, so it feels like 25%, not bracing. You can kind of brace and then feel, and then let that go by 50, let that go by 25, and then keep that feeling as you roll the pelvis back. And then you're still going to be using those deep muscles to roll and rock. And then I'm going to find that neutral position where the pelvis feels quite wide and heavy. And then I want to notice what happens when I scoop one leg up. Now, number one, does the pelvis stay stable or does it tip? So definitely one side is easier than the other. You might find it helpful to place the hands underneath the pelvis and just feel where you are. So I want to have even pressure on my hands as the leg arcs. And this is really great feedback for me, because I can feel immediately if I put my weight more into one side. So that can be really helpful. But then I want to come back to the feeling, because I can push and brace, the belly kind of distends to lift the legs, or I can really sink and melt and really feel that nice connection and support from the ribs all the way down. And in some ways that feels easier, but more stable. Taking the block away, I want to have that sensation now as I roll into some of our articulation moves. So I want you to melt into your feet, take your head block away. I want to roll into that nice new 12 that feels a little bit nicer. I'm going to melt into the feet, and I'm just going to keep that quality of the deep support. And as I get further up, what tends to happen is the belly starts to lift, or my back starts to push. So I'm just going to keep that feeling of falling into my spine, and I'm starting to now feel some tightness that's coming into my hips. So make sure that you're doing your regular releasing through your thighs as you go into this bridge, and coming out and into our bridge position. So I want to feel the feeling of space. I want to feel length through my low back and feel the feet coming into the floor. If it's helpful to have your arms up rather than down, that can be quite helpful for people. And then as I go down, rather than forcing the spine down, I'm just going to keep that deep support all the way down to the floor. And release. Lovely. So we can use that and apply that to a lot of stuff that we might do on the mat for our spine. Doing some work on our front for our upper back would be helpful, but also if we start coming into little rotation patterns. So if I'm doing some cable work where I'm rotating from one side to the other, as I'm coming into my standing posture and I have that lovely deep connection, now when I rotate, my upper back is going to be the mover. If I brace too much, what you'll see from here, I'm in actually a rounded position. My spine doesn't actually move very well. And if I have nothing, I end up moving a little bit too much into the lower back. So by having that nice deep connection, remember going back to our standing posture where our weight is back and we feel that sense of lift. And if it's helpful to feel that navel retraction and chest opening, but I tend to feel that it feels much nicer to feel like the whole belly wall is drawing back gently rather than us thinking of our navel. So a whole belly wall with the ribs expanding. And then as I do a pull and a push on one side, and you can do this without weights, or if you've got a little flex band or a tubing, and actually as I just glide from one side to the other, I can pull the shoulder back, pull the elbow back and reach. Now if I keep that connection, I'm going to be rotating much nicer through the upper back. Pull the shoulder blade back gently, bring the arm by the side, and then you can see my shoulder blade glides around my ribs nicer. If I let go, you can see, and that also feels really awful on my shoulders. So if I keep that lift equally, so if I brace too much, then I end up getting quite a lot of tension in the front of the shoulders. So hopefully that was helpful as an introduction to just connecting a little bit better to our deep muscles and not feeling like we have to brace and tense
Notice when you're doing your workouts, either in Pilates or fitness classes, or if you're doing stuff at home, at how you're activating the muscles. If you're doing things like rolling up and rolling down, or even plank positions, are you bracing and holding there, or can you do it in a much softer way? Any